This is the Persons of Interest podcast, diving into careers, personal stories, life lessons, and more, featuring interviews with interesting people doing interesting things. I'm your host, Derek Dockett. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to kick it off with my good friend. He is the Springfield News Leader Sports Department. I don't even have the words to describe this young man whose career has now even expanded since the last time I talked to him. I am, of course, speaking of Mr. Wyatt Wheeler, fellow Missouri State alum. Wyatt, how are things going, sir?
Busy, man. Just getting excited for basketball, whatever that's going to entail with everything going on. Just hoping I have plenty to cover. Very excited for to cover some Bears, Lady Bears. The high school in the area is just phenomenal down here. So it's looking like a very exciting winter if everything goes correctly. Looking forward to it. Just happy to have something. And looking at just kind of sent a schedule to the boss last night that had the next 2 weeks, and it was just something just about every night. And it's such a breath of fresh air after having nothing for so long.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we had a basketball season last year. Of course, it was cut short. Like, we made it through all of Arch Madness, didn't have the Missouri Valley Conference women's basketball tournament, but we saw Missouri State's regular season. We didn't see a postseason, and then we didn't know what was going to happen. So we had all that summer, and then you actually had football, a very short one, which I want to get into. But it's weird because it seems like everything has been so long because of we didn't have baseball. We didn't have the other sports that we would have normally had in that same time period. So, yeah, it's good, especially college basketball. Everyone knows I've talked about it several times. I'm a huge college basketball nut. So that starts for several teams today as we're recording. Missouri State will be in action. Is it Friday for both of them?
Friday for both of them.
Yeah. Awesome. So, well, let's start football. Let's go back because I think the exciting part is it's a whole new, different ball game for Missouri State football with head coach Bobby Petrino. Funny story to start this one off. We had a Missouri State alumni function in St. Louis. Man, I can't remember when that was now, but Cliff Smart was there. And this was right when the Bobby Petrino hire was happening. And he actually asked me, he said, "Bobby Petrino, what do you think?" I'm like, well, I don't know. This is interesting. It's like when the president of the university asks you something, you're like, you don't really know why he's asking, but you also don't know how to respond. And I have my own personal feelings about it. And I was kind of like, well, the guy can coach. That's probably what's needed. If we can get past the personal stuff, we'll see. But you saw it, front row seat. You saw practices, well, limited. You got to talk to them. You saw games. I guess your reaction to what the fall was like for Missouri State football.
No, I've really enjoyed working with them so far. Of course, there was a lot to be made there of what he's been through in the past, and that's kind of a regional thing, just kind of with Arkansas close. I mean, people really knew that story when he came in. I mean, that's a national story. Everybody has seen the photos following the motorcycle accident, and it's just it was something. I feel like, I mean, Missouri State, Cliff Smart, Kyle Motes, they're sick of losing.
Yeah,
it's been,
and the fan base is too. The fan base is sick of losing.
Oh, and the fan base. I mean, it's been so bad for so long, and you go you have a 1-10 season under Steck to finish that off. I mean, it was really surprising. I mean, when you talk about that story on hiring Bobby Petrino, you can't forget that Missouri State originally said it was going to stick with Steck, for another year. And then a couple months later, they decide, oh, this wasn't a fit. This isn't going to be a fit going forward, and decide to get rid of him in January after the season ends in late November. So that's a part of that story. And then they have Bobby Petrino the next week. So they knew the records were really bad, so they needed to do something to bring a little bit of professionalism, somebody who's won before, and just a good program builder before, because Bobby's been able to do that at previous places. And Kyle Motes, of course, has a relationship with them dating back to Louisville. So that is something that, it was surprising. It was surprising to everybody. Missouri State's able to go land that big of a name, pay for that big of a name, and have Missouri State, Springfield, Missouri, be that attractive to somebody who was just at Louisville, who's been the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. There's just a lot there that Missouri State doesn't usually have, but it was able to get in this hire just because there was mutual interest. So, it's been fun to listen to him just talk football, talk program building, having reasonable expectations for how this is going to go and how to quickly turn this into something. You already see higher level recruits coming in just because of name recognition, whether that's a 4-star quarterback or some highly regarded junior college players. And and everything built, despite going 0-3 in the spring, it was a lot better football than what we've seen in previous years.
It was a promising 0-3.
Promising 0-3. And playing those 3 games will make them better in the spring because they played them.
Yeah.
A lot of teams weren't able to play those spring games these fall games because of COVID. And so Missouri State getting those 3 games, getting some things on film, knowing what they're going to need to do, how to be better, and just have people talking positively about the direction of things is a big deal going into a conference season where the expectations still shouldn't be that high, but they're still going to be better than expected. Defensively, that you have a really good defense. That's something that has been flipped dramatically. They were among the worst in the country a year ago, everything defensively. And you see here with going into this year, you see the past 2 games, at least the second half of the Oklahoma game, that's a defense with guys who are able to get after the quarterback, are able to make tackles in open field. That's something they didn't have before. Just guys who can make a tackle.
Yeah.
First guy wasn't able to make a tackle ever, and that's something that they have with some of the guys they recruited. I think they have a potential NFL corner in Jeremy Webb. They have a good freshman safety. They just have rotational guys that can get after the quarterback, and they already have more sacks in 3 games than they had in entire 11 games last year.
Wow.
So that's the creative blitzes. That's guys who can get after the quarterback. There's just so much there defensively that just shows you, hey, if we can get a competent offense, we can maybe pull out a few wins. Now, the offense has been a problem. The offensive line has not been good. You see him going after some JUCO guys. If he goes after some JUCO guys that didn't play during the fall, they can be immediately eligible for the spring. So they can have some just like kind of free agent pickups here before the spring season. And plug in some JUCO guys who have been experienced, try to get that shirt up. And then it just falls on the quarterback play. And the quarterback play has not been good. Jaden Johnson, as highly touted as he was coming from Southern Miss, being a Bobby Petrino guy, couldn't take care of the ball here with just the early part of for 3 games. He had a lot of turnovers, and he ended up getting benched for another quarterback, for Jake Van Dyne. And that's a ballsy move by Bobby to do that. But it was kind of needed if you were hoping to win that game. Yeah. And there was a little spark, and I still wasn't too impressed. I haven't been impressed with either of the quarterbacks, and Bobby's actually gone out and gotten a JUCO guy that can compete for his starting quarterback job. I mean, there's a quarterback controversy, and that's going to have to be better, because if they have good quarterback play the last 2 games, they probably beat Central Arkansas 2 times because they have good weapons at receiver. They got Jeremiah Wilson back at running back, and that's a really good running back. Should be one of the better in the Valley. And they're going in the right direction. They just have some spots that they need to shore up to be able to compete, even in the level that they're at, or even at the level they're at right now, in a good conference that has some championship caliber teams. North Dakota State, Illinois State, South Dakota State. They're all considered championship contenders, while like Southern Illinois is should be a playoff team. Missouri State could be in that conversation if they could be in that playoff conversation at the very least, if they are able to shore up some little things here and there.
Call me crazy, and it's okay if you really do call me crazy, but I didn't watch all 3 games. I didn't even get to see the Oklahoma game. I did see a big bulk of the game at Central Arkansas. Jaden Johnson at least looks athletic and has athleticism, which is something that we typically haven't seen in a while from a Missouri State quarterback. I guess the term, the sports talk term would be, he showed some flashes. They weren't consistent, but I feel like he showed some flashes of potential.
Even seeing him through practice, I mean, he has a great arm, and that's an arm Missouri State hasn't had since I've been down here. Now, the quarterbacks I've seen aren't anybody to really to speak of. Peyton Huslig I would have loved to see him in a different offense. I think he could have been a lot better without the Steck staff. I mean, then you're just talking about Brody Lambert and Breck Ruddock, and those are the quarterbacks I've seen since being down here. So, I mean, Jaden's got a special arm. That athleticism is, I mean, it is really good. I mean, he's able to move, whether it's play action to just try to take some pressure off of a shaky offensive line. And he's able to run some option stuff where ended up being the best offense for them at that point when he's not really taking care of the ball too well. But yeah, I mean, if they're able to use him in different ways, that should be able to make him a good quarterback. It's just taking care of the ball, and that consistency just hasn't been there. And that's something. And another thing to remember with him, he's a redshirt freshman,
right?
Making starts, and he didn't really have a regular offseason to practice,
right?
So I mean, there's no reason to say, oh, this guy can't be good yet. He still has a lot of potential. Just needs to clear up some stuff, and he should be good. Everything when you look at it, practice, throwing the ball, should be good, but just needs to show it on the field.
Yeah, I guess the expectations is going to be, what is the team? What's Petrino's expectation? Are they looking to build a program and get this thing going the right way? Or, I mean, I can't imagine they're expecting to go in and try to build an immediate winner, playing a redshirt freshman at quarterback and knowing that this is a rebuilding project. I mean, I think that's probably the understanding that we've got a slate here, almost a pretty bare cupboard of, let's get this thing going the right way and build something. It's almost like what Southern Illinois has been doing. I mean, it's taken time. They've been patient, and now they're on the cusp of playoffs. So, I mean, you would like to think that could be the blueprint. But I mean, I don't know what's Petrino been saying about what his mindset is about this job that he has and the team building in the future.
Well, he's smart. He knows what he walked into, what job he took. He knows all of the problems it's had before. He didn't take over the most talented roster to the point where he's having to go find some guys even right now for the spring. So he's been realistic. He's not been talking up playoff caliber. He's kind of just one day at a time. He doesn't even set like winning, as the ultimate goal right now. So just some of the language, it's been like, we're going to have to celebrate some minor victories in practice. So just like those little bits of growth, we're going to have to watch film and celebrate the good things we've done. It doesn't like not really looking at the records, wins and losses right now, even though he's a coach and he wants to win. And that's something that they're going to they want to do, but he's not setting like unrealistic expectations on his team nor himself, to the point where he's like, oh, we need to try to get in the playoffs right now. And I know Bobby's got this, another part of Bobby is that he's got this reputation for bailing on some programs pretty quickly after he turns them into a winner, whether it's Western Kentucky after 1 year. He left Louisville that first time to go to Atlanta, and then he bailed on Atlanta to go to Arkansas pretty quickly. So it's been he's used the right wording to just try to ease expectations on himself and on the team. Because it's Missouri State football. It's 30 years of irrelevancy, and he's just trying to build a program into what he thinks it should be.
Yeah. So how's this going to work? Because they played 3 games in the fall. There are teams that didn't play anything, like Illinois State. North Dakota State, I think, did they play a game or 2?
Yeah, they played one.
So there's a mixed bag, and these are non-conference games, obviously. Do these games stay on the record until
they're 0-3 already.
Okay, so they're 0-3, and their next game is on February 20th, so they're in a really long bye.
Yeah, it's like a 17-week bye week is what I was writing around when they were done. So
until they travel to North Dakota on February 20th.
Like lifting and meetings right now. So yeah, it's different.
And they're playing conference games. I'm looking at the schedule now. There are nothing but conference games left. Yeah. So it's a full Valley. It's a Valley Conference slate, Missouri Valley Football Conference slate that they're playing. So teams that hadn't played anything, they are where they are. Missouri State's played 3 games. So it's almost like they've had an exhibition, a preseason schedule, but they are actually counted games for their 2020/2021 record book.
Yeah. So, it's dumb. When you think about it, it's like, what are we doing here? But it's funny. I think they're better off 0-3 than 0-0 right now.
Sure.
Just playing those games. Of course, they got the money from Oklahoma,
which is big.
Which is ginormous for that athletics department. I don't want to undersell that just because, that's going to save a bunch of jobs and things that programs can do. Might have even saved a program. Who knows? Right. But it's good. It's really good to have that. But even seeing like the success they had in the second half defensively, seeing they should have won 2 games. They know they should have won 2 games. And they were able to get out on the field, see what they do well, and know what some of the things they need to fix on offense, especially. They're able to see the potential they have, and they're way better 0-3 than going into late February wondering, hey, what do we got here? Just let's throw Jaden out here. He's going to be people still think he's great. I think it's nice to have the little bit of expectations eased back on some of those young guys and what their offense can do.
Yeah. Ever since I've been removed from working in the sports world, I enjoy now looking forward like most fans do about the future. And one thing that I'm really curious about is, and I'm curious if you've heard coaches, not just from football, but maybe all sports, their approach about using football as the example. They're going to play this season that starts February 20th, kicks back up February 20th, and it's in spring. Their regular season will end on April 17th with the game against Youngstown State in Springfield. But from that point on, April 17th, what happens in theory, if we do have a traditional, things are back to normal, we've got, prospects of vaccines now. And what happens if we do have football back in the fall of 2021? The concern about student athletes, that quick turnaround, football recovery, because normally, April, you're talking about spring football, that practice, those scrimmages and things like that. And then we're playing actual real life games. So have they talked about, if there's a different layoff schedule? Do they delay the start of the 2021 season, play a shortened one? I don't know. I'm throwing things out of my head that I'm envisioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I've asked Kyle about that before, Kyle Moats, and just because I mean he's got to look at that stuff too, as an athletic director and as the chair of the playoff committee for the FCS.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's scheduling all this. He knows this better than anybody, how late in the season a lot of these teams are going to go.
Right.
But it sounds like there are going to be some I mean, there's going to have to be some changes just for bodies of football. And, I mean, people can barely play football week to week.
Right.
So, I mean, once you get to the month, once you get to these layoffs, they're going to be needed. But I don't really know for sure yet, but it does sound like there'll be
some modifications,
changes. Yeah. But I know that, they have some contractual dates for some of these games that they're going to want to play, whether it's in Oklahoma State for another bye game. So those are important dates that they're still going to want to play. It's just a matter of how they go about scheduling some of this offseason.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. The Bears I've mentioned it before, North Dakota on the road to start out that spring season on February 20th. Illinois State at home on February 27th. This is going to be so interesting, especially for you, because March 6th, Missouri State football could very well will be playing Northern Iowa and Cedar Falls. The first weekend in March is typically reserved for Arch Madness, and basketball season is now starting. We're all hopeful, and I think folks are going to do whatever they can to get a full basketball season in, because I've heard the talk about if there is no at least the NCAA tournament in terms of revenue, what a dagger that would be for 2 straight seasons. So I think they're going to probably do everything they can to play it.
They're getting it in one way or another. It might be modified.
Right.
I mean, try to play 68 team tournament or whatever.
Yeah. And the same for conference tournaments. So you could be looking at a weekend of football, a weekend of a conference tournament, and then the final weekend of women's basketball. Those things could overlap for the first time forever. Not to also dismiss all the other sports that have been shifted to the spring as well, like volleyball and cross country, everything else that is an Olympic sport that's going on. It could be kind of interesting to see how that all plays out. But from a coverage standpoint, what is the one-man news leader department going to do? Yeah,
I've sat down. I do a radio show with Art Haines, who calls football, calls basketball. And I'm like, what do you get? It's just I don't know, man.
And baseball too. I can't even forget about
baseball at that time. So there's so much insanity there. But it's something we haven't really discussed yet, just because even now the schedule for the Missouri Valley Conference isn't even out again.
Right. Everything's fluid.
So we're not 100% sure on how we're going to go about it, but we'll figure it out. We got some good freelancers. We got my college reporters, college reporter system. But yeah, it's going to be awful. I'm not looking forward to it.
You're going to be very busy though. Job security.
It's something that stressed me out. Even when I saw it, I said to Kyle Moats, and I was like, you know what you're doing to us? He's like, hey, you used to have nothing. You're going to like this. Complaining one way or another, Wyatt. And this is going to be so difficult.
Yeah, but they're going to be filling on their side too.
Because, the Lady Bears are going to have so much. The Lady Bears have so much potential. The Bears, you don't know how this season's going to go quite yet, but you got to cover Arch Madness. And then is it a home football? It's an away football game. It's Bobby Petrino trying to turn a program around. Yeah. And Northern Iowa is one of those great teams that could be in the championship conversations. So
how about if you're a Northern Iowa fan, you're playing football against Missouri State Saturday, March 6th. You could be very well be playing in a late round Arch Madness tournament game, maybe against Loyola for your first bid to the tournament in a couple years. It's exciting. And I'll be honest, I'm going to love it sitting on the couch at the time.
Inject it into my veins. We need to figure out something there, but those are conversations for a later date.
Okay. Well,
I'm not looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to those big events, but I'm not looking forward to trying to figure out how to do it.
Logistics will be interesting. You mentioned you've been a mentor to some young minds. That definitely one of the things I wanted to get into. So how's that been? You had some students learning from the great mind of Wyatt Wheeler. They're live in the field doing reporting, which the coverage was great. I mean, to get other folks assisting you, I know, especially the football season in the Ozarks, it's now become just as popular as basketball season. I know basketball is still the ruler down there with the success of teams that have had, but people love their high school preps coverage, and having some other bodies I know has been helpful for you and great to add more coverage to the paper. But what's it like mentoring some young minds?
Man, I got to tell you, I have not been proud of my high school coverage. And since I've been down here, it's just, I mean, it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
A one-person sports department, just lack of preparation for planning and all of the stuff. I didn't really have that great of a feel going into it. It was really hard. It's nothing I've been proud of until this year. I have great bosses who trusted me when I pitched this idea. The story of the idea came. I was sitting in the wedge at JQH Arena covering a basketball game, and Amanda Sullivan and Claire Nierbergy, I don't know if I probably butchered her last name. They sit next to me at the Bears games, and they were just talking about internships and having to figure out what to do, freelancing stuff. They looked at me and they're like, "We would work for free for you." And then I looked at them and I was like,
"Are you crazy?"
An idea. And I looked at them and I had the idea. I worked that night. I actually wrote up a plan and sent it to my boss and Steve Herzog and said, "Hey, let's talk about trying to get some college kids in here, and I'll run it all, and I'll work with Missouri State to try to get them have this count towards their internship requirements." And we was like, okay, we'll discuss this once we get closer to high school football season. So, you have the pandemic and everything, and a kind of a struggle for money for everybody. And I just kind of brought it up, like, hey, I don't know if we're still hoping to do something like this, but I think this will really help. And he said, yeah, do a more detailed plan, send it to me, and we'll try it. We'll get you some money so we can pay these kids. Figure out who you want to get. So, Claire graduated, but Amanda had one more semester left. And I knew they had a great up-and-coming sports editor in Stephen Terrell. So I grabbed those two and said, you two are going to do some high school football coverage for me this year. And we'll do weekly meetings and get your department head in contact with me, and I'll get you your internship hours. So, we did that, and we did it in a different fashion. Like, we did different sorts of headlines, different sorts of coverage, whether it was different featurey headlines, just kind of fun. Like, instead of Nixa goes to Ozark, Nixa beats Ozark in rivalry matchup, it's get a fun featurey quote out of the coach and then write something fun. So the headline ended up being like, Nix's coach refuses to eat in Ozark, but the win over his rival had to be pretty sweet. So that ended fun stuff like that, and even analysis pieces like 4 things that makes Webb City a state championship contender again. And so, different sorts of things that grabs the reader's attention and brings them in, just doing it differently. And I've run numbers just seeing how different this was. So I wrote alone with an occasional freelancer last year, 37 stories throughout an entire high school football season. I don't know how that sounds to you, but when I say that me, Amanda, and Steven wrote 116 for this fall season, I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible boost in coverage, kids' names in the paper.
Absolutely.
From different games, just different types of stories, to where I felt like where it looked like people were actually reading our coverage. People were thanking us for our coverage, and it felt like it mattered. So I'm really proud of that. And just looking over, watching Amanda. I mean, Amanda came into this program. She already had a lot of experience from the Standard. She didn't need it. She had an internship with the Kansas City Star. She's as good. She was as good as anybody in the area writing. I'd take her over most probably every freelancer at this point.
And now she's got a real big person.
She's got a real job, and that's the goal, and that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see for Steven someday. Just I got to be somebody who was on the phone trying to get her that job as a reference. So I mean, her being down at Branson Tri-Lake, still being in the area, I hope she better be able to move. She better move up someday, just because she is that good. And I mean, woman in sports, it's difficult, but I've watched her work, and she's as good as anybody, and she belongs in every press conference she's been in. Steven Terrell, up and comer, has another. He's going out there, and I'm telling him, oh, Joplin has this quarterback with the name Always Right. Go write me a story how it says Joplin's never wrong when it turns to always right. That's the headline I wanted. But when the other team decides to win, that's not a very good story to write. So he was great adjusting on the fly. He was really, really good at adjusting on the fly and coming up with some good stories, great at the analysis pieces. And I get him for next semester, and I get him for the year after that, because I ain't letting him go. And I'm gonna have a meeting here. He's gonna get some of his Standard kids to sit there with me we're gonna do a Zoom conference just to kind of encourage them. Hey, I know how much I struggled to just kind of get in that internship, be able to get in this. This is a really easy one if you're showing me that you're working hard and love what you do, because that's the kind of people I want to work with and make better. And it makes the standard better. And that's something I love that I came up through. I'm going to work with Drury Drury and Evangel, because I think it's important to bring the other universities in and encourage that journalism, because a lot of the stuff, I mean, the Standard went from once a week print to digital only now. That's a new thing for the Standard, and that can discourage some people from wanting to go out for that, do the good work, because you don't have it in your hands, and it's just different than what you had in the past. So I think it's important to try to encourage the next batch of young journalists to just kind of work hard and go there, or else you're not really or else those opportunities aren't going to present itself to you. Because I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm sitting right now talking to you if it wasn't for the Standard. So I love it. I love seeing. That's one thing I've missed since working at the News Leader. I was supposed to be the editor-in-chief of the Standard before I was hired away from there here. I love working with younger people and encouraging them to work hard, just because I'm younger, and I remember how hard it was for me coming up through that. And just seeing Amanda's success going on somewhere. I know I didn't play the biggest part of it, but I mean, it's a weird sense of pride that I have just seeing her there. I've been able to text her back and forth saying, just kind of sharing, hey, because she's kind of still in the area, here's some stuff you need to keep an eye on. And it's been great. It's very rewarding just kind of seeing other people's success by coming up through this, and it helps me, and I'm going to help them.
That'd be awesome to have those kids covering some more of the stuff that would also benefit not just your high school coverage, but also the Missouri State, the Drury, the Evangel coverage when they do go on a big run for whatever sport it might be, because more hands on deck give you more opportunity to tell more stories, not just covering game by game, but here's
it's all like being considered. I want it to. High school is definitely the circled one right now.
Sure.
And then we'll keep working them in just as I get more comfortable with some of the other up and coming college students, because I want them to be experienced, and I don't really want to have to teach them too incredibly much. I want them to work hard, get that experience through the Standard, and then be able to come over and just be able to help me and get a little bit of money.
You're not a very demanding, mean, cranky boss that likes to push the needle and pick on. What kind of boss is Wyatt Wheeler?
I feel like I've been good. I mean, they're all like, I mean, they're just a couple years younger than me. We got to remember, I'm 25. And I mean, some of these students are still like 22, 21.
Yeah, but you having any kind of power is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, but I mean, they're still, they know who I am. Yeah. Like they know they can come in here and give me a lot of crap. Yeah. Just based on what I do, what I am. So the person I am, I mean, they know that I can joke around and give me a hard time. So they're not going to take anything they wouldn't take anything too incredibly seriously if I were angry. And I mean, they're good enough to where I don't have those problems. I think the only problem that I had was when one was in COVID quarantine. I'm like, why are you in there? And he was like, well, I have a cough. And he ends up not having COVID. And it's just like, well, stay out of there. It's like, well, I didn't want to be in there. But I mean, these kids, they're great. I mean, and we'll see what happens once I start to get older. And now I'm in this boring low 30s, old man in some of their eyes. I mean, they won't be wanting to kick it with me on Zoom anymore, as much as they might be comfortable at the age I am now. But
if any potential college student that is looking into joining the news leader writing program with Wyatt, here's a word of advice. If he asks you to get coffee or his drinks for him or his dry cleaning, don't do it.
Oh, yeah, that was the joke. I wanted them like, you guys were supposed to get me some juice boxes. We actually had them come into the office one day, and we had a couple other people working in here. And then I act like I'm just starting to yell at them, and they're just like, what's going on in there? And then I kick them out of the room. I'm like, all right, gather around the chair. And I pull out a AP style book, and I start reading it to them. And it was the night before high school football season.
I love it.
I want it to be fun, and they better be having fun, because if you have that's the cool thing about high school football. When you're the cool age that I'm at now, at 25, I'm able to joke around with these high school kids. I'm able to relate to them, as weird as that sounds, just being 6 or 7 years removed from high school football of my own. I'm able to still understand the type of the music they listen to. I mean, there's so many little things where they have that little bit more. They're a little bit more comfortable just being around younger people, having fun with them, than they are with an adult. So I think
because you're not an adult.
I'm not an adult. I mean, I consider like. Doing a radio show with Art Haines now, I mean, it had so much professionalism, just because Art's just the pillar of professionalism of sports coverage in the Ozarks. And now he has me, the exact opposite. I'm an unprofessional professional. It's like what I kind of call myself. But as long as we're having fun, and I think it's sports, I mean, you got to have fun.
That's a good transition to my next question. You're doing radio now with the one and only Art Haines. First of all, how did this even come about? Like, I knew you had told me before that at one point there was a discussion with you potentially doing something on the radio years ago, and nothing ever came of it. But now I guess there's been change with ownership at the station. Things have sort of changed and morphed over a little bit of time. But here you are, you find yourself on Sports Talk, which has been Art Haines' staple. Like, that goes back years. Like, I remember when I was in Springfield in college, I had a part-time job where I drove around a van. I drove a van around town to pick up mail at businesses, and I worked from about 2:30 to 7 o'clock. So in that 4:30, 5 o'clock window, I turned on the Jock or 560, whatever the station it was on at the time, to listen to Art and take calls. That's a legendary show for people in Springfield, and now you're on it somehow.
Yeah, it was funny. Tom Ladd is actually the guy I report to And he got a job overseeing some of the radio stuff, some of the talent at the sports station. So I've done a few spots with Tom, whether it's been at halftime of some Lady Bear games. I did halftime of some Lady Bears during the NCAA tournament run and Sweet 16 run just a couple years ago. So he's heard me on the radio, whether it's calling into Art's show, and I was a pretty frequent guest. And we've always had chemistry. As weird as that sounds when you think of the generational differences between me and Art, just the age gap there. I've always loved and respected Art. I mean, that's one thing that doesn't escape.
As several people do. Art's like
everybody loves and respects Art.
Greatest guy ever.
Just a great human being. Somebody that I look up to as a young sports reporter. So I was able to joke around with him when I call in. I just give him a hard time. We'd have some fun. I mean, we always talk about my wiffle ball team, and Art would play like intro music for the head coach, and then he'd interview me like I'm a coach. So like a little bit that we had in there. So we had this chemistry built just from me calling in, but. Yeah, Tom Ladd, we were initially talking about the possibility of me having my own show in the afternoons. Now, you do this show, and I'm sure if you listen back to earlier episodes,
they're awful, cringeworthy.
You just think about, I wasn't comfortable there. It's hard. Yeah. I mean, it's different. People think it's just you hop on, you start talking. You got to talk in an engaging way.
Yes.
You got to be able to be clear, think quickly. I mean, I'm still not the quickest thinker, and everybody knows that.
You're just lining up all the great quotes in this podcast. I'm not an adult. I'm not a quick thinker.
No, but it's difficult. So I mean, I did some little like tryout shows. Whether it was I did one whole show with Art one time. I did a couple shows with Tom Ladd. And I'm not at the point where I can host anything. Just talk for 2 hours. I don't really.
By yourself is tough.
Yeah. So I don't know how Art's done it for the last 15 years. And the preparation, I can't really do as much preparation as a host kind of really needs to do, just because I'm still working. The news leader job comes first. Even though my job is kind of like a whole day of preparation, just covering sports in the Ozarks. Sure. So what's going on. But I don't have that skill yet of being able to host anything. So it's different than being the sidekick, one that just comes in and just kind of gives takes or whatever, or it comes in and be's a part of the conversation. So I don't think I would not have been good I still wouldn't be good as a hosting something on my own, but they did hear the chemistry that I have with Art. They said Art's been wanting to have somebody that he could just bounce things off of, have discussions with throughout a show, because he's been doing it by himself, and that's a difficult thing to do. So I went there and had a meeting, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to be the co-host of Sports Talk." I'm like, that never crossed my mind. I thought I was going to do something with Ned Reynolds in the morning or in the afternoon. I'm like, you want me to be the co-host of Sports Talk? And like, this is Sports Talk. This is Art Haines Sports Talk. And it's like, that's kind of, that's the show around here. It's like that. It's like, you can't mess with Sports Talk. And it's like, as long as Art's okay with it, I mean, I'm not going to say no to this. It's it's incredible opportunity to be in the same sentence as Art Haines down here, just because he is the legend down here, so respected. Like, I'm not going to turn this down, but you better make sure it's okay with Art.
Yeah.
You better have Art tell me this is okay. This is something he wants, because I don't want to like intrude on his legendary space. And they're like, no, it's okay. He's like, this is something that he wants. And we bounce it off of him. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, we do. So that's how it came to be. I didn't turn it down. I add a couple of hours to my week now, and I've really enjoyed it. I mean, getting paid to sit there and talk 2 hours a day with Art Haines about sports and have the friendship that I have with him now, getting to know him and just kind of and doing some more things around the area has been really cool. And I love it. I think it's paper and writing still is number one in my heart, but hanging out and doing that a couple hours a day, it's something I've really enjoyed.
You're on the Bernie Miklasz path here. He was obviously a sports columnist for the Post-Dispatch, long number of years, and also did radio. And recently, the station he was on here in St. Louis, the ESPN affiliate station, they let him go because of when COVID hit, advertising budgets got hit, and they let some of their talent go. Well, he's getting back into the radio space again. It's not writing for the Post. Of course, the Post he's moved on from writing there, but he is getting back into the radio space. But a lot of people love Bernie's writing, love his opinion, love his radio. So you're creating a little media conglomerate for yourself now with all these things you got going on.
Yeah, it's weird. Just kind of see, I don't know, quick rise or whatever. It's been nice to. I thought back of how dark that first year was for me being full-time reporter. I mean, that was the hardest year of my life, just kind of being the only reporter. They don't have a specific high school reporter anymore. It's just down. It goes from whatever it was from like 8 to 6 to 2 to 1. I mean, I was the face of all that. So that was really tough. And I mean, and at that time, I hadn't gotten help for depression yet. And that was just a dark year because, I mean, the stresses of that year, you have everything coming down on you just because you're the face of everything and you're the young guy. And I wasn't ready for it. I don't think anybody's ready to go into some kind of situation like that. You have the stresses of the Paul Lusk year. Just added on to that because that was a tough year. Where there were a lot of expectations for that team, and there's just little things throughout the year that pop up, whether it was a cryotherapy incident or him getting that clause removed from his contract. There were things that just made that stressful for him, and a lot of that was taken out on me because I was the reporter reporting on some of that stuff and asking those questions when we get into the press conferences. So that, I mean, that was a dark year in my life. I got help and everything actually right after that basketball season, just because it needed to happen. But then, yeah, just kind of gotten comfortable. Herzog became my boss, which I can't tell you how big that was for sports at the news leader. He liked sports more than my previous boss. My boss before that wasn't the biggest sports guy, but he made me a good reporter. He taught me how to write better. He taught me how to report, not really care what people thought. That was needed in my growth as a reporter. And that was kind of stressful throughout all that, but he made me better. Herzog trusted my creativity, and he's creative as well. So we bounce ideas off each other all the time, and he has a huge hand in the sports, just everything that goes on. So, I mean, can't be more thankful for him. But yeah, I mean, it just being able to turn things around, getting this college reporter system up and going and revamping and bringing respect back to the sports coverage, and being able to have the personality that I have that's able to go on and be attractive to a radio audience. I mean, it's been really fun to just kind of see. It's been fun to look back and see, here is where I was this first year, and here's where I am now. And it's been something that's been really cool to look back at.
Heck, even go back to reporting at the Standard when you and you're doing, video features, and you're trying to figure out what's creative, what's going to stick, what works, what do I feel comfortable doing? I mean, I'm a terrible writer. and I've gotten slightly better as I've sort of merged a little bit out of the social media space into doing more, other things. But I mean, everybody goes through the same thing of, you figure out along the way, and there's something to be said for on the job training. I mean, you learn everything you want to learn in college, but what you're doing at the newsleader and doing now on the radio, I'm sure has become even more valuable because you're sharing that knowledge with other kids.
Yeah, and I tell the kids, I mean, the best experience, the most you're going to learn is not by sitting in a classroom.
Right.
You are going to get something. You're going to get a lot of things out of the classroom. Don't get me wrong. Still go to school.
Yeah.
Go through all that. Learn your journalism stuff. But you're only going to get that comfort if you go out and do it. I remember I always challenged myself. I remember just the anxiety that I had inside of me. Challenge yourself. Ask one question during this press conference, because the guys are sitting up on the stage. Like, people are all around you. People are going to hear the question you ask and judge you for it. You got to ask one question. And then maybe a couple months later, okay, I'm going to try to get 2 questions and a follow-up in there. And just keep trying to challenge yourself, push yourself more to be more uncomfortable, to the point where some of that stuff becomes comfortable. And now people want me to stop asking questions during press conferences because they need to ask questions. So that's just you got to make yourself uncomfortable to be comfortable. And that's something that I've learned while working. It's something that I think that all young reporters need to learn. And
now sometimes you're the only one asking questions in press conferences.
Yeah, those are frustrating, man. I go into a post game press conference for Bobby Petrino after their last game of the season, and I'm the only one.
Yeah, I heard you say that in the.
I'm the only one in there asking questions, and the TV stations, they decide to just leave their computers up and running and record it. So they're still going to use my work on the next day to throw on TV. So it's like, come on, guys. It's like, I don't want to ask questions. I want to throw a fit and get my own press conference if you guys aren't going to be here. And they're like, oh, we might have been on the air at that time. How many reporters do you have? It was like, how many? Like, you got 3. How many do I have? I got 1. It's like, come on. But whatever.
And you had also a press conference when it was just you and Petrino as well, right? Just only you two?
Yeah, it was just me and Petrino. And I mean, I loved it. I mean, the players are way more relaxed when it's just one-on-one. And I get to sit there and talk football one-on-one with Bobby Petrino. Yeah. I love football. That's my number one sport. And that's Bobby Petrino, who's coached in the NFL and has coached Lamar Jackson. And I just get to sit there and talk ball with Bobby Petrino. I mean, if you told me I was doing that a year ago, I would have called you crazy, just because I was talking football with Steck and he was giving me 2-word answers.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I didn't even ask you. I got to get into this because we're coming up on an hour and I don't want to keep you too long. We mentioned at the outset the basketball season was getting ready to start. Let's start with the Lady Bears because, man, they were like rocking and rolling last year, and things obviously were the rug was pulled completely out from underneath them. They won the regular season. We didn't have a tournament for them, but they're starting the year outranked. What do you think about the Lady Bears? It looks like still the sky's the limit for them.
Yeah, sky's the limit for them. We talked. They lose. Their main contributor was Alexa Wheeler that they lost.
Yeah.
I actually got to talk to her last night on the air on the radio, and she was just saying, "Oh, they're going to be so good even without me. They have, I mean, if you remember that team, she was the most consistent scorer, but there were girls on that team who were able to break out any given night. Whether that was Ellie Ruffridge, Bryce Caleb is probably the best player. It was top 3 player in that conference. Just defensively, she passes the ball better than everybody. She takes care of the ball and she can score. So Bryce is phenomenal. Jasmine Franklin, one of the better players. She's going to go down as one of the better players in history of the school.
I'm a huge Jasmine Franklin fan.
Athletics, 6'1" player, junior. And she might have 3 years remaining just because of this division. ruling. So, I mean, that's a girl. She's going to break the rebounding record. She's going to break some other records, be one of the best players in the school's history when it's all said and done. Sydney Manning had her games. Of course, she hit the game-winning shot against Drake, but she had a great game even before that. So, I mean, Abby Hip's a good player as well. Abby Jackson is one that I'm looking forward to watching. She's got 2 years at Missouri State. We'll probably going to get her first glimpse of her after transferring from Auburn on Friday. But I mean, this team is loaded still. And you see what Drake's lost. A team like Bradley's probably going to be a little on the rise. They have a really good player that's preseason player of the year candidate. Illinois State, I really like the direction they're going in. Drake's still probably going to be competitive. Northern Iowa was always competitive. It's just a good conference. They lost to Southern Illinois last year. So, I mean, this team, I mean, they're set up to be really good. So, I mean, you see they're ranked 24th going into the year. So, I mean, you already have that national recognition. They kind of had to earn their way up, even though they were coming off a Sweet 16 appearance the year before. They're already in that top 25, and their goal is probably going to be to finish in that top 16 again. We don't know what the women's tournament's going to look like, but they're going to want to put their in a position to possibly host games at JQH Arena. So I think that, I mean, their non-conference schedule actually sets up for them to be able to climb their way into that conversation, especially when you consider it's game 2s against number 12 Maryland.
Yeah.
They play at Mizzou, and then they host South Dakota State, who's been receiving some
very good team,
some votes. So they set themselves up to have that type of successful season where they're climbing their way up. Now they probably aren't going to be perfect. That Maryland game is going to be a big challenge. Some of those top tier women's basketball programs are up there for a reason. Maryland was that a year ago, just kind of having to rebuild a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, Coach Mox is a special coach as long as she's going to be here. I mean, she had them. She looked like she was a better coach than maybe Kelly Harper was. Kelly, she had them rolling with that group that Kelly had immediately and looking even better than they were the previous year that they went to the Sweet 16. So just the on-court coaching from Mox has been impressive. We haven't seen how her recruits fit in yet, just because she was taking over such a large roster of newcomers, still has that this year. But I mean, the sky's the limit for them. I'm so excited to watch them because they're a fun group of girls and they're just fun to watch.
Lady Bears start the season on November 27th with Florida Gulf Coast. We mentioned the game with Maryland on November 28th. Maryland ranked number 12. Wake Forest, Tulsa, Lincoln. They'll be at Mizzou on December 13th. And we mentioned the game with South Dakota State in Springfield on December 19th. The Missouri Valley Conference schedule been sort of put on pause. They're going to retool that. They had the president's meeting, which I think Cliff Smart may have broken that news. He's active on Twitter.
He likes to do that every once in a while.
that may go back to my time working at the conference staff too.
He like before that Oklahoma game, he decides to slide in, and during he decides to slide in and kind of a big rumor that was going around in Oklahoma saying, Oklahoma almost had to cancel this morning. And he's like, is this being recorded? I might have said too much. It's like, Cliff Smart, I know he is smart and he knows.
I think he likes to mess with us.
He knew. I have no doubt he knew what he was doing. He's like, Oklahoma had some cases on their side. They almost had to cancel this morning, but our guys are on the road. It's like he knew what he was doing. So it's like he cracks me up sometimes with some of the news breaking.
He tweeted the picture, the Zoom screenshot of all the presidents in the AD's meeting, and mentioned that the Bears and Lady Bears schedules would be different, and that's all it said. But then it turns out it was Missouri Valley Conference schedules because they were retooling it. So it looks like they'll be doing a different back-to-back schedule on both the men's and the women's side. Looks like so. We'll wait for that to come out. On the Bears, real fast as well. Boy, we thought we were going to get something special. It didn't turn out that way the prior year, but in their benefit, maybe not having the pressure of being a preseason pick. Being picked 6 may not be bad, because I personally feel they still have that potential to be special. Now, Northern Iowa and Loyola are going to be something totally different this year. I mean, there's a clear cut 1 and 2 this year, and I saved this for last because I also want to throw in. I love the idea, the concept of the Valley Beat Writers Zoom podcast thing that was your brainchild. That's a phenomenal listen. I'm getting ready to listen to the next one that was just posted here shortly, but Valley basketball this year, the opportunity for 2 teams in the NCAA tournament, it's there. And what a way to go out for Doug Elgin's last year as commissioner as he retires at the end of the academic year. But speaking for the Bears, maybe being picked 6, I don't want to say fly under the radar, but that could be what happens because if Gage Prim is healthy, you can tell us more about that. That could be a game changer. Having that Cameron Krutwig type of person in a Bears uniform could be quite the difference maker for a team. And hopefully they can get their situation figured out with ball handling, who's running the point, and some overall better shooting. Could there be a totally different story this year, regardless of being picked 6th in the league race?
Yeah, I think they entered this year in a lot better shape than they did last year, just from not having those expectations. And I mean, you got to remember last year was just a whole batch of newcomers as well. Whether Tyree Dixon coming up from practice, Josh Hall coming up from practice, Lamont West coming in, highly touted guy, Gage Prim, never healthy last year, even at the very beginning of the season. But I think this is good for them, and even changing everything out right now. I mean, 10 new faces on that roster. I believe 9 of them could play. A few of them are red shirts or walk-ons. But I think this sets up well for them. I like the way Dana kind of rebuilt it, and it's different construction. It's different. He went with more of a JUCO approach. You're going to have guys who graduate transfers. So those are guys that you just figure are going somewhere to try to play more, or they weren't a good fit somewhere else. So they're going to go try to be an immediate fit somewhere where they think they're going to be able to play, like a Lamont West. And they just never really fit. They never were. Teamwork. They never looked like a team. As lame as it sounds,
right? That's
so lame coming out of your mouth.
But you nailed it. That felt like the issue.
That's what it was with that team. It feels like the worst analysis ever. Oh, go out there and play like a team, guys. But it's a truth for this squad. So it was frustrating, and I think they're able to kind of fit some of these pieces. Like the JUCO guys, Dana's had success with JUCO players, whether it be Gage Prim being the number 2 JUCO guy in the country coming out of South Plains College, and Keandre Cook was a standout player for 2 years that just signed with the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
So he's had some success with the JUCO guys, and you go get a guy like DeMarcus Sharp, who is also a first-team JUCO guy like Gage Prim was before, and DeMarcus Sharp is going to run your point. So that's, and you think about the point guard problems they had a year ago. Tyree Dixon never really was that good for them, and then he gets hurt and is out for the rest of the year. So then and then Ford Cooper Jr. never really was that good, ended up finding the bench and ended up just leaving the program after the year. And then Jamonte Black is playing out of position.
Right.
And wasn't even a point guard for his high school team, because his point guard in his high school team's at Kansas now and is going to contribute there. So you have a kid playing out of position, and you don't have a healthy Prim, and it was just a jumbled up mess last year. But you look at this roster, you have DeMarcus Sharp going to be your point. I was really impressed with Lukai Patterson, just the player, the freshman to get to know. That's a late addition they had, and they weren't going to fill that scholarship unless they really felt like they had somebody good. And I think Lukai Patterson's a good guy to be that secondary point guard, another ball handler, and you have some ball hand. You have some of those other freshmen that could contribute. Jamonte Black has some experience at it now, even though you don't want him there. You want to play him somewhere else. But I like the roster. I think it's going to be more. I don't see the ceiling as high as definitely a Northern Iowa or Loyola.
Right.
Still see a Gage Prim being a challenger for first team all conference just because he's healthy and he's one of the players at a per minute basis, and he's going to be going up against Cameron Cutwig and Austin Fife for that first team selection, and I think he's capable of doing that if he's on the court enough.
Yeah.
Marcus Sharp will start. Jared Ritter, he doesn't have that much college playing experience, but he's still one of the older guys on the team, and he looks as good. He looked pretty good, a little comfortable when I got to see him.
Is he healthy? What's his situation?
He's healthy.
Okay.
He says he's 100% for the first time in a long time. So happy for him, a local kid that a lot of people really like down here. And then you want to see those sophomore jumps. Isaiah Mosley is a special scorer, and he can be that for the team. I mean, that's somebody that has been highly touted since he was supposed to be the best of the Rockbridge three. And Missouri State landed him, and they have high expectations for him. Can Jamonte Black get back into his own role and do better? And then which one of these freshmen step up, whether it's Lukai Patterson, Skylar Wicks, Ray Fayers, and I didn't mention Nick Tata, junior transfer, 6'10" kid who will be playing some good playing on the boards and being right. I mean, he plays a different position really than Gage Prim. He could be playing next to Gage Prim, so you have a 6'10" guy and a 6'8" guy there. So yeah. There are some things to look forward to there. Now, I'm not looking forward to non-conference play just because of the schedule.
Look at the bright side. You don't have to travel for them.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to travel to JQH Arena for some of them, but I think they should be better. I think they have good potential, and I think it's an important year for Dana because he's entering the third year of a 5-year contract. Really promising first year and a really down second year that bummed out a lot of people. So it's important for him to have a good third year. So. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the Bears, I jokingly say that Wyatt doesn't have to leave, but they really do have every single one of their non-conference games to start the year in Springfield at JQH Arena. The Bears will take on Evangel Friday, November 27th. Ecclesia, how do we pronounce this? Do we know?
Oh, I think it's Ecclesia.
Okay, Ecclesia College.
I've said it wrong on the radio multiple times. They have about 180 to 230 students in their entire school.
Okay.
15 of them play basketball, so
take what you can get.
I got a text from somebody who covers College of the Ozarks basketball, and he said that this is probably the worst team he's ever seen.
Well, we'll go ahead and just put the W on the schedule then.
I like 200 is are they going to score 200? I mean, that's the question for this game.
Well, we know there'll be a lot of work then to be shared for the Bears. Central Arkansas, Mississippi Valley State, Southeastern Louisiana, Northwestern State, and they will play Little Rock to round out the non-conference schedule completed on December 21st.
That Little Rock game's really important. I mean, that's the team they lost to at the buzzer opening night last year.
Yep.
I mean, it just kind of set the tone for the entire year. There was all that anticipation going into that first game. They don't look that good, and then they end up losing at the buzzer. Just it's bad taste in your mouth the entire year. And it just kind of started with that. I mean, this is a good team. Picked to win their division in their conference, and they have some first team players, the conference player of the year, preseason favorite on the team. So Little Rock's really good. That will be a big one. Just kind of. I mean, you don't want us to be sitting here saying, "Oh, they're 6-1 and not very good."
Right.
That doesn't sound right, but it might be what it is just because those 6 games before are not that strong. So you want to get, 7-0 with a win over Little Rock before whoever you play, start out Valley play, really important. That'd be a good win for the Bears.
Yeah, I will say this, and I know everyone talks about scheduling and things like that. The Bears, everyone's been a victim of COVID scheduling. I mean, here in St. Louis, SLU literally backed out of, they're calling some of these events MTEs that are being hosted by Kansas State or Nebraska, just, 4-team events and whatever. SLU was scheduled to go to one, backed out, just late this past week, and added one on their own home court and added SIUE, Edwardsville, and St. Louis College of Pharmacy, and I forget which other team, but it's just the situation of COVID. So scheduling is wreaked havoc on schedules of all sports and all kinds, and college basketball definitely because of the timing and teams. I'm seeing Twitter now of teams that are testing and they're saying, "Oh no, I can't do it," and I'm just now seeing a tweet from John Rothstein that was retweeted by Paul Oren that says Drake's Noah Thomas has opted out of the 2020-2021 schools college basketball season, obviously due to COVID and COVID challenges. So, things like that. And Drake is getting ready to play a game at 1:00, 30 minutes as we're recording this. So he's opted out. So that's a significant development. And that's sort of been what it's been like this year.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like basketball season. It doesn't feel like we're doing things right, but we're here and we're doing it. So I guess I'm not going to complain too much. I'm going to be happy to cover some games. I'm just hoping that everybody could stay safe. That's
the important part.
I'm not a fan of Missouri State. Because I'm a reporter and I've never really allowed myself to become a fan of them or anything about it. But I do like the people. And I do become a fan of the people. So just hoping for the best for the guys.
That's right. I'm hoping the best for everyone involved. We can have a safe season as best as possible, as few quarantines as possible. And I don't want to hark on it because we both talked before we started recording that COVID has worn us all out. And we're happy to have sports where we need it because sports have been our release. It's, take 2 hours out of your time to just watch something for entertainment and root for something and get going. So, man, we went an hour and 15 minutes just about. Didn't expect it to go. And we didn't even mention the Chicago Bears once.
Yeah, that's for the better, man. That's for the better.
Wyatt, man, I really appreciate your time. This was a great discussion. I had no notes, but you've got something, a connection with someone where you can just sit down and talk and have a conversation. The one thing I'm going to still push you on, though, is I'm waiting for Sports Talk to have a podcast so I can listen here in St. Louis.
That's something I asked for when I said I'd do it. So
they're posting clips online. Tom Ladd retweets them, and they're on YouTube.
I'm staying on them. I'd like a full show.
Yeah, but, I need that podcast feed. It makes me easy. It makes it easy for me to listen when I'm out running.
Yep, I'll work on them.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. All right.
Yep, appreciate you.
All right, man. Take it easy. Thank you for listening to this episode of Persons of Interest. Do me a favor. I'd really appreciate if you took a moment to leave a rating or review about the podcast. Head over to Apple Podcasts, and if you don't subscribe there, just search for Persons of Interest, and you'll find it. I really appreciate the support, and if you have any suggestions for future guests or how I can make the podcast better, just shoot me a tweet at DDocket on Twitter, or you can head over to my podcast page at anchor.fm/persons of interest and leave a voice message. You never know, I just might use it on a future podcast episode. Thanks again for listening to Persons of Interest.